Let's say you want to buy a laundromat and the sale price is $100,000, but they make $50,000 a year profit. So you're buying for 2 times profit. It's almost as if you put your money in a savings account that's giving you 50% instead of 0%. So that's how you judge your risk versus your opportunity. And then you decide if the risk is something you're willing to take. So always reducing risk is the first goal of an entrepreneur. I think Roland would agree. Reducing risk is the first goal. And then you find the opportunities where you can reduce the risk, but everyone else perceives it as too risky, and that's when you buy.
You're listening to Business Lunch with Roland Frasier. This is your seat at the table.
Hey, James, what's going on?
Roland, always good to get together with you, even if virtually.
Agree. Are you in New York?
I am in New York City, yeah. Where are you?
I'm in San Diego.
Okay. Last time we had a meal together was in Austin in 2012.
In Uchiko, right? Yeah, I remember. That was fun. That's been a while. So thank you for coming back.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Thanks for asking me to go on.
James, can you share with us a little bit about, I know you've posted on Facebook and some other places, kind of what you think of what's going on. Will you tell us what you think of what's going on from a business and other perspectives that you want to share?
Sure. And I don't know if there's an easy way to separate out a business perspective from other perspectives. Like, we're all humans dealing with this and trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you say something and people will say, oh, well, I better listen to the epidemiologists instead of you. Or I'll say something like, oh, well, I'll listen to the small business owners instead of, everybody's got their expert audience, but nobody really knows. My entire point is nobody really knows anything. Like, this is a brand new phenomenon that's happened to society. Mm-hmm. And it started off with this mania and hysteria when I guess there was a report out of Harvard and a report out of Imperial College, and then the New York Times blasted everywhere, which said, oh my God, it's going to be over 2 million deaths and 150 million people will be infected in the US, and maybe half the world will get infected. And people believed it, and that is what created policy, and that kind of fear, allowed the population to accept it. And I don't disagree with the policy, like social distancing. Mm-hmm. Since there is uncertainty, social distancing seems appropriate, quarantining of positives. But I've done about 4 or 5 podcasts with immunologists and epidemiologists and so on. And one thing everyone agrees on is that there's a beginning, middle, and end to this pandemic. And we can see in other countries, the whole course of this seems to last about 3 or 4 months, with the midpoint halfway through. And again, I'm not speaking as an expert. I'm totally repeating what other people have told me, other experts have told me. So if you say March 1st was the beginning, and if you say it's 3 months, June 1st might be the end, give or take, some time.
I thought it was kind of the government to say that only one bad thing should happen on April 15th. So they didn't want the pandemic to outshine tax day. So they've given us July now to actually have 2 very bad days in our...
Right. So if you're on vacation in July, you're going to have to take a total break and realize how broke you're going to be by the end of vacation. So that's going to be fun. We're going to have a fun summer. But, at the same time, on the economic side, the stimulus probably does seem like, actually, it's unbelievably huge. So there will be, assuming there isn't a new normal after this, the economy my view is, will surge, but it will surge into a new normal. Industries are going to change. Some will go upside down. Some will disappear. Some will surge. But $2 trillion extra dollars are going to just be parachuted into the markets, whether it's the stock market, the private markets, the entrepreneurship market, the bond market, whatever. It's $2 trillion is a big part of a $15 trillion economy that only grows 1 or 2% a year. And I do think, since all of us now are sitting at home, not buying things, that we should start to enter a new phase of economic growth starting, let's say, sometime between May and September. We'll start to feel the real flush that a surge like this brings.
Yeah, for sure. And so what are you doing in terms of business and investing and finances right now to adapt? And what opportunities are you seeing right now?
I'll do it in reverse. So finances, I think cash is king. And by the way, I borrowed some cash, not the maximum, but I borrowed some cash off of stocks just to make sure I was flush. Who knows if in a worst case scenario, what they do.
Yep.
And so that's in terms of finances. In terms of investing, I was a hedge fund manager for many years, and I was a day trader for many years before that. When things go up 10% a day or down, even up, you don't like up days like that. You don't like volatility. The world's economy doesn't change in volatility 10% doesn't change in value 10% in either direction in a single day. That's impossible unless there was like a nuclear attack or something. So when it goes down 10% a day and up in 10% a day, I don't like the market. People always say buy when there's blood in the streets. That's true, but I'm not qualified to know when all my blood will end up being the one that's in the streets. If I buy I'm happy buying too late, because let's say the Dow's fallen by a third and I start buying only when it's 20% down. I don't need to scrape the bottom and stress it out. I'm happy to find good stocks with good dividends that caved in half during this flush. But I'm looking at ways to buy the entire market at maybe a good price. I'm also looking at good, stable companies that have enormous dividends right now. And I'm looking for stocks in industries that will surge. So for instance, any industry that benefits from remote work, for example, notice the Netflix and Amazon, they've all agreed to streamline bandwidth for a few weeks because there's so much excess demand for bandwidth. So companies like Palo Alto Networks, there's other companies that make the chips for bandwidth. These will do well. Robotics, drones, remote learning, remote working, all these stocks will do well. But by the way, just as a quick example of how crazy things were in the stock market, Zoom, which we're using right now, Zoom, the stock soared because we're all using Zoom. The problem is there were two Zooms on the stock market. One was the real Zoom. The other was a company that was a fake company based in, ironically, Shanghai. It had no operations and no employees. That stock, because everyone thought it was the real Zoom, that stock went from 1 to 14. And people were saying to me, should I, because I was telling people this, people were saying, should I short this? Should I bet against it? And I'm like, no, don't get in the way of a crazy person with a gun. Like that, sure, you should capture a crazy person with a gun so he doesn't harm anybody, but you don't need to do that or you'll get hurt. So, and in fact, the Securities and Exchange Commission suspended trading in those shares. But that's the kind of craziness that's happening now. So I prefer to just watch on the investing side for a while. There's going to be opportunities in this market. You never should feel the need like, oh my God, I'm going to miss everything if I don't buy today. Like that's never the case.
Now, you're in the publishing and info product world, and I know you work with several different companies on that kind of thing. Because there's a lot of folks on here that are in those industries, what do you think the smart moves are there right now?
I think, first off, this month is a great opportunity to stay in touch with your customers. So if normally you reach out to your customers once a week, you should maybe consider reaching out to them 3 times a week. If you reach out to them 3 times a week, consider reaching out to them 5 to 7 times a week. Like now, everybody is stressed out. Everybody is panicking. Don't try to sell them anything new like, oh, check out my special coronavirus report for $99.95. Like give stuff for free, work hard, give stuff for free, really let your audience know that you're there for them, even in the podcast world. So I reached out to all my advertisers and offered them the opportunity to, for free, just have their CEO do a public service announcement on my podcast for free. They can record it in 1 minute, send it to me, I'll air it on the podcast. So, think of opportunities to give to your customer base now. This is the wrong time to get from them. But then afterwards, think about in your industries, what's going to be a problem. Let's say you're in the health industry. Well, everybody's just been binge eating while binge watching and not going to the gym. So there might be, the coronavirus diet afterwards, or on stocks. Certainly, there's going to be opportunities after this is over. In entrepreneurship, every day I'm trying to think of, you asked what I'm doing for business. I'm thinking of new businesses for myself every day. I always write down. So I saw someone mention in the comments. I always write down 10 ideas a day on my waiter's pad, and most of them are horrible ideas. But every now and then, you might come up with something that is worth exploring a little bit more.
So two things there. One, would you share what is the idea journal idea? Is it as simple as writing down 10 ideas a day, or do you have more methodology than that?
No, it's as simple as writing down 10 ideas a day, because what happens is, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, Roland, like creativity has to always be exercised or it atrophies. Like if you get into a bicycle accident and you're stuck in bed for 2 weeks, you'll actually need physical therapy to walk again because your leg muscles will atrophy so fast. It's the same thing with creativity. Or another way to think about it is possibilities, exploring new possibilities. And so you have to exercise it. And I exercise the idea muscle or the possibility muscle by writing down 10 ideas a day. Again, almost all of them are bad ideas because you can't have 3,650 good ideas a year. But you do this, and after it rewires the brain, after a few months, you actually feel like you're thinking about things, thinking about creativity and ideas in a different way. And also you become much less judgmental on yourself for bad ideas. Like I try to write down as many bad ideas as possible, almost as a challenge. But it's not just ideas. I could think of 10 ideas for books I could write, 10 ideas for new formats I could try on the podcast, 10 ideas for Roland Frasier and his business. And then I reach out to Roland, like, how's it going? I've been following all your posts. Here's 10 ideas you might want to consider writing about. Mm-hmm. And no strings attached, like hope all is well. I've done that with Amazon, LinkedIn, Quora, Facebook, and Google. And I had an opportunity to visit all of them by sharing my ideas with the right person in each company. Never got paid a dime for any of it. I flew out on my own dime to each place and met with high up executives in each place. But when you share these ideas, and the better the ideas are, the better. But when you share these ideas, it's an opportunity for networking. So that's another thing I've been doing during this quarantine, is that I'm a real shy person. I wouldn't normally call someone up and say, hey, how's it going? But during this quarantine, I'm able to write to, Mark Cuban and say, hey, Mark, really impressed with how the example you're setting in terms of how you're treating your employees. Hope you and your family are safe. Good luck. And then boom, that's it. Nothing else. Don't ask for anything. Just kind of stick your head up like, hey, remember me? You were once on my podcast. Like, okay, see you in another 5 years. But I've sent like 100 of those types of emails out to everybody. So, there's different ways to use this time that are unique and unusual to this period.
So are you thinking, do you find that email is the best way to do that as far as reaching out to folks?
Yeah, I mean, for me it is, because I'm shy about calling people. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, for instance, Roland, I called you a few months ago, but we knew each other already. But I like to email, and this is a weird time for introverts. Like all the skills of introversion like really work well in this environment. So, and again, by the way, you asked if I have any ideas to share from today's list. I have one or two, and they're bad. Maybe they're all bad ideas, but can I share one or two of them?
Please, yeah, absolutely.
So one thing is, we're all applicable for stimulus. I mean, probably many of us here own small businesses, or at least are registered, get our money as a small business. Well, I want to know if I can borrow money from the bank as a small business owner. Every other small business owner can. So then I was thinking, someone should set up a stimulus advisory service right now and market it, to populations that might need them. And I don't know what the right price is, but it's just an idea. People are going to need help navigating this stimulus. So imagine like a passport renewal service. Like if I go through the government, it's going to take me a month. If I go to a speedy service, it'll take me 2 days. Think of the stimulus advisory service as someone could set up that just walks people through everything they need to do. So this is a service that could be, anyway, that's one of my ideas of the day. Another idea was, I was thinking, Roland, you have a podcast. I don't know if you have advertisers or how you monetize, but, I monetize my podcast through Mid-Roll. Mid-Roll sells ads. They get advertisers like Microsoft and American Express, and those people advertise my podcast, and they take a 20 or 30% cut. And what about if you just create a podcast advertiser exchange? So sponsors on one side, ranging from a budget of $10 to $100,000, and podcasters on the other, and you have transparency with all your numbers and so on. That seems like a more efficient model than the Mid-Roll model. Mm-hmm. So that was, I just gave you the worst idea and maybe the best idea on my list of 10 ideas today. Oh, my worst idea might be quarantine in a box. So you create a subscription service, quarantine, boom, hit my subscription, and I get a box with hazmat suits, oxygen saturation meters, antiviral pills, surgical masks, canned foods, and so on. You get a new box every month. So that's the worst idea.
What are your thoughts on crypto at this moment in time?
Yeah, so it's interesting because this has been a very interesting time for currency. On the one hand, a decentralized currency or other functions of Bitcoin, like blockchain functions where you can securely track things, that might be interesting. First off, decentralized currency might be interesting in a world where if every government starts printing money and if it gets out of control, we might need a decentralized currency just to fall back on as a safe currency. And gold is not that because, gold has a lot of problems. I won't get into it. But the other thing is just in terms of tracking the rise and fall of pandemics, there might be an interesting use for blockchain there. But I don't know, Bitcoin fell hard and now it's bouncing back up. Bitcoin has hundreds of billions of dollars in it. It seems to be surviving. It doesn't seem to have crashed as much as other asset classes. It actually seems a little safer than the stock market, for instance. So we'll see, I think. But I am actually grateful that we live in a centralized currency economy because given the economic shutdown, which I don't think should have happened the way it did, I am glad there was a stimulus package to counteract that. Although, who knows what will happen? There'll probably be inflation in a few years.
Are you still playing in that market? Are you still involved as much as you were a bit ago?
No, because I own Bitcoin and my reasons for it have been the same for about 4 years and it never changes. The story never changes. So every type of currency solves the problems of the previous type. So metals solve, informally barter, paper money solve the problems in metals, fiat money solve the problems in government, in gold-backed paper money. And now we need something to solve the problems of fiat money. And Bitcoin nicely does that. And, that's the story. And money, every industry has a way of evolving. The next evolution for currency should be some form of decentralized digital currency. And Bitcoin has, 1 million hours of top software developers behind it, plus 200 billion invested in it. So it probably is the winner. And my story doesn't really change. So it's not really worth it for me to find a different way every week to tell the same story.
What do you think? Did you get a chance to read Ray Dalio's research report that he did at Bridgewater on the kind of the history of capital? Basically, he was saying that was first it was it India, then it was the Dutch, then it was the British, now it's the American. But he sees China as the next currency leader, world thing, and basically we're going to all be dealing with everything backed in yuan.
Well, that report certainly didn't age well. Like China just lost every trade war they were involved in. Like if you were manufacturing in China, guess what? You're not going to be manufacturing there anymore, or you're going to remove your manufacturing. So now's the time to look into, like I'm looking at exchange traded funds for India, for Indonesia, even for Malaysia. So there's going to be other countries that are going to be, what we realized in January even is that no industry had a plan B even. Everybody was only, even the things that manufactured in India went through China before they came here. Even things that were grown here went to China for the packaging and then came back here. It's insane how much we depended on China without anybody realizing it, that every industry was secretly 100% depending on China. China, unfortunately for them, that's the whole trade war, that's over. They're begging us to do business with them now. So I think Ray Dalio is going to have to rewrite that report.
Yeah, I was wondering when I was reading it. I mean, I got where he felt things were going, but I also felt like it'll be interesting to see if any other country wants to give a single country, like the U.S. has been so blessed with the dollar for so many base things over the recent years. Does any other country really want to give another country that right? But at the same time, do they want to give that right off to a crypto type currency, right? I'm kind of curious, like, is it going to go to a moderated panel of countries to control that, like the IMF? What do you think?
No, I think it's going to end up working like the internet a little bit, in that there just becomes some tipping point where, boom, everyone starts using it. So for instance, if you follow Bitcoin's price, every time there's political volatility in a country, the price of Bitcoin spikes. It's because the wealth of that country, whatever country is experiencing volatility,
Please.
yeah, they leave, and there's no place for them to put their money other than Bitcoin. Like if you're in Iran, if you're wealthy in Iran, you can't change to dollars. You have to change to something else, and Bitcoin has really been your only choice. So when, for instance, when the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear accords, this is a couple of years ago, Bitcoin spiked up that day because $2 billion worth of Iranian wealth bought Bitcoin. And Argentina is a great place to look at because Argentina is perpetually on the verge of currency collapse. So even the day, their currency was crashing and they actually banned people from buying Bitcoin. So of course, another $1 billion of currency left Argentina and bought Bitcoin. They don't follow the law there. They bought Bitcoin. And Argentina, I think, is going to be the test country where we're going to see a tipping point where just the entire citizens just leave en masse. And, there's already like two different black markets. There's like a black market, a blue market, the regular market. Currency there is messed up. So they're going to leave at some point and do some other currency. And Bitcoin, again, seems like the default most likely. What we haven't seen yet is a lot of transactions now with Bitcoin. But, as the volatility settles down, I think we will start to see that. And, we haven't seen kind of the next generation of what happens in cryptos. But I do think Bitcoin, we see how it survived like the worst crisis in human history, and it went up. So I think, Bitcoin's here to stay. The story still hasn't changed, and I'm encouraged by how it acts. But, it's hard to say buy Bitcoin now. Like it's amazing. Now in particular, there's so many stocks that are very cheap and undervalued. It's more interesting to look there.
What would you, if you were kind of making the decisions, you have John Maynard Keynes's paradox of thrift, that in a recession, everyone pulls back, which only perpetuates the recession. And so it's hard to get out of that cycle. What would you suggest other than encouraging people to get back and consume and spend to deal with that to help shorten things?
Well, first off, it was interesting he said that because the Depression, that did kind of happen, but that kind of happened in the Depression because Herbert Hoover specifically, and Andrew Mellon, his Secretary of Treasury, specifically did the opposite of stimulus. They raised interest rates, for instance. They restricted loans. They were afraid of the speculation, the over speculation of the 20s. So they slammed shut speculation and spending. Now we do with the playbook ever since Alan Greenspan, but more specifically with Bernanke and the financial crisis, and we're using the exact same playbook now. We overstimulate, and Americans don't save money. The average American has $400 cash in the bank. The average small business has 20 to 30 days cash in the bank. The average restaurant has 16 days cash in the bank. So Americans spend. So imagine, you're a school teacher and your pay hasn't been docked. The school teachers haven't been laid off. And now you have a family of four, so you're going to get $3,200 in stimulus checks. You're going to spend that money. It might not be day one, but it's not going to be day 60. You're going to spend it pretty quickly. And the economy is going to see, once we reach a new normal, assuming the economy gets reopened roughly around, between the end of April and the end of May, you're going to see a surge in spending. Again, a $15 trillion economy like the US typically grows several hundred billion, maybe like 500-600 billion a year. Imagine if 2.2 trillion in stimulus just got bombed on your country. And then, by the way, it's not 2.2 trillion in spending. This is an important point. If I give you $1 to buy a newspaper, and then you use that same dollar to buy a donut, the economy just went up by $2 with the same dollar. So That's called the money multiplier. So 2.2 trillion in stimulus, that might be 5 trillion in spending over the next 3 to 5 years. So this is so unbelievable. We've never experienced before, so we don't even know what's going to happen. The closest, of course, was 2009, and that resulted in this 11-year bull market in the new normal that came out of the financial crisis. This now is so much more. We have to be a little bit worried about bubbles and inflation and things like that, but I'm not worried about that until 2022. I mean, who knows? If you were a conspiracy theorist, you would say this was odd timing to create a surge in the economy right at the time of the election. But
Yep.
I don't think it was planned that way. I think it's sort of unfortunate.
How do you see this impacting? Like, where is your crystal ball telling you the economy is going to go, and how will that impact the election?
Well, I think in terms of pure data, Q2, which I think Q2 is going to be like such a disaster in data that you should just close your eyes, because it's not even going to matter. We're going to look at an economy that maybe is up to close to 20% annualized down, which would be even worse than Great Depression levels. Mm-hmm. But so put Q2 to the side. Q3, we'll see the beginnings of the stimulus. I'm always assuming the economy starts to reopen end of April, early May. Starts. Q3, we're going to start to see the beginning of this surge in the stimulus. You might see, 5% or more growth in the economy. And then Q4, it's lights out all the way through 2021. I don't even know how you hold back the money. Like everyone's going to, and there's not really going to be inflation either, for the reason you said, is that people are still going to be nervous for the next year. Like, just like 2009, nobody hired people instantly. 2002, no one hired people right away, even though there was stimulus. Like, it's going to be slow. So we're just going to feel flush starting by Q4 and then all through next year. So I do think in the election, we're going to see a stock market that's back to 30,000. 2021, it's almost a slam dunk that it's the Dow Jones is going to be back to 40,000. This is not even a prediction. Like, where else is the money going to go? Like, it doesn't take that much money to get the Dow to 40,000. And now we're talking about trillions of dollars. So, and then in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities, I do think VC and private equity might slow down a little bit, because everyone, all the kind of smart money are also the ones who are panicking the most about dying from this virus. They've made all this money, so now they don't want to just simply die from some virus. So they were the first to shut down. But I do think there's entrepreneurial opportunities for people like us that build businesses that are profitable fairly early on. And there's going to be opportunities in media, because we're all at home finding more media to watch. I think there's going to be opportunities in online learning. So the basics are like information products, like what many of us do. But try to think more sophisticated for your community. Like, are there courses, or is there any kind of guidance you can give that's above and beyond, like, do these 5 things to lose weight or make money or meet people or whatever. Like, I think now you have this audience. If you're an info product creator, you have this audience, and now you need to kind of help them survive this economy, and that's going to be the products that will do well. And I think there's going to be a lot of great opportunities to start small businesses that don't require much funding, that should be profitable from day one. And and who knows what that might be. But the next Uber is certainly going to come out of this period, just like Uber came out of 2009, just like Microsoft came out of the recession in the 70s, just like Hewlett Packard came out of the depression in the 30s. There's always the best opportunities to start businesses right now. So I haven't wanted to start a business in many years, but for the first time in a long time, I'm thinking about what businesses are worth starting right now.
I love it. So we got a couple of questions. David says, what businesses are worth starting right now, James?
Well, I mean, if we all knew that, we would be obviously starting them and fabulously wealthy every time. But you look at the industry, you look at what happened in general, and you could start to guess. I mean, one exercise for 10 ideas a day are what 10 industries are going to suffer and what 10 industries might do better. So, for instance, on May 1st, even if they lift, the quarantine in New York City, it's not like on May 1st, you're going to say, I'm going to start a restaurant in New York City. That would probably be the worst idea in the world, because I'm not going out to a restaurant anytime soon, and restaurants are probably going to have limited capacity and regulations about that. And real estate in New York City is probably going to suck for a while. Cruise lines, airlines, they never should have bailed out the airlines. Airlines have a history of going bankrupt in times like this. So the US government just threw money away to the airlines. So these industries will do poorly. Anything relating to travel, tourism, commuting to work, things like, and then you see the opposite of that, remote work, delivery, remote learning. So for instance, there's a lot of great businesses in online learning, but I bet you there's opportunities in online learning as well. For instance, we realize now that college was a scam. They just sent all the students home. Oh, you could just learn online. It's just as good. we'll keep your 70,000 a year, but you go home and don't bother us anymore. And if online learning is just as good, you don't have to spend 70,000 a year to go to Quinnipiac College anymore. You can take courses at Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Code Academy, Masterclass. But what I don't see is kind of a curated cross-platform effort to almost develop an online major. Like, let's say I'm hiring and I want to know somebody has the skill set of a computer science major. It would be good to have across all these different learning platforms a cohesive and study list of courses to study that will give you the equivalent skill set of a computer science major at college. And I think there's going to be opportunities there across all these online learning platforms. So that's one thing. And another thing might be, we've all been arguing on Twitter, Facebook, whatever your social media is. Everyone's been arguing. When we argue, the only one who wins is like Mark Zuckerberg. He makes an extra 10 cents every time. Well, I got to tell him something, reload, 10 cents to Mark Zuckerberg. What about if we created some sort of tipping jar for people who are now having most of their time online, just either giving courses or discussing things or doing podcasts or having big Twitter threads? There should be tipping jars where I can say, oh, I like that guy's tweet, 25 cents. Oh, I like that Roland's doing this. I'll give him $2. And we build this kind of culture of rewarding people in very small ways for good content and good media that we're all consuming more than ever now remotely. And, that's a potential business idea. It's a little like Venmo, but, I don't know. We're just riffing on the fly here.
I like it. And obviously Venmo has not been profitable for PayPal at all. So, that's good company they're in there. What about all the companies that have been bleeding money like SoftBank and et cetera? Where do you see those guys going?
Yeah, well, think about Uber. Okay, so Uber is a SoftBank company. WeWork was a SoftBank company. Now, Uber was a many venture capitalist company. I don't know how much was SoftBank, but just in general, all of these companies that we've been relying on, Uber being a great example, these are welfare companies. So when I buy a $10 ride on Uber, that ride actually costs about $20, but venture capitalists and now, unfortunately, the public, because Uber is a public company, venture capitalists have been subsidizing my rides on Uber, and I'm very thankful to them. But at some point that ends. And so all of these welfare companies are going to either have problems, they're going to have to reduce, or they're going to have to raise prices, or they're going to have to figure out some other way to make money. Like maybe Uber, if it's all automated, it will be a little bit more profitable. But in general, all of these welfare companies that can't depend on a quick IPO now, and they can't depend on another venture capitalist giving them, no one was giving Uber money at their next level, which would have been over $120 billion valuation. So they were out of VC choices. They had to go public. The public were the great. It's the greatest fool theory. The public were the greatest fools, and now Uber. Everybody who invested in Uber at the IPO is down on their luck because Uber is a welfare company. So I would say in investing, try to avoid companies that have no way out of a welfare system, and try to start companies again that are the most successful companies I've ever started were all profitable from day one. One
Right.
company that I raised $100 million for, I lost $100 million. So go figure. Yasser Arafat, by the way, invested in that company. I realized only after he died. So it was good for the Jews.
Jill has a question. She said, how receptive were those companies that you mentioned before to listen to your ideas when you were sending them? Did you wait to tell them about it until they agreed to meet with you, or how'd you go about that?
No. Never. This happened to me in 2002. I had sold a business before. I was, some people know this way. I was dead broke. I had like nothing left. I went from millions to $143 in my checking account. I was losing my home, everything. And I sent out a letter to all of my heroes and said, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'll fly to wherever you are. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. I got 0 replies because it's not like Warren Buffett is sitting there and he gets my email and he suddenly yells, Gladys, hold everything. Some guy named James Altucher wants to buy me, the richest man in the world, a cup of coffee. I better meet him. That never happens. So that's when I started coming up with these ideas for people. And I wrote another email to everybody and I gave everybody 10 ideas. And I said, these are your ideas. I don't need anything. Good luck. Have a nice life. Whatever. You don't ask for anything. You just give. And then 3 of them got back to me, and 2 of those 3 launched me on careers. One launched me on my writing career, and the other launched me on became my first investor in a hedge fund. So with Google or with LinkedIn or with Quora or with Amazon, Amazon's a good example. I wrote to the person who was kind of in charge of self-publishing, their self-publishing division. This is several years ago. I had 10 ideas for how to improve self-publishing, and I was already a self-published author through them. And they were like, "This is great. Are you in Seattle ever? You could stop by and visit." Well, I had no plans to be in Seattle, but of course I replied, "Yeah, it turns out I'm in Seattle next week."
Right.
And I flew there, and they gave me a tour of all the different parts of self-publishing. They showed me all the different things they're working on. And then years later, when I needed some help from Amazon on something, I had people to call. I really was helped a lot. In fact, they always put my self-published books in their special programs, and they would hit #1 in the entire Amazon store. And it became a good relationship. Google, I ended up doing a Google talk. LinkedIn, I ended up flying out and doing some consulting for them, unpaid. I didn't ask for anything. Facebook, similar. And it's just, this strategy has worked really well for me in terms of building up a network and again, being a shy person, it's been a great way for me to sort of put my foot in the door just in case I ever need anything later. Like, let's say I start a company and I want to sell it to Google. Well, now I know the people to call, maybe. So it's useful.
Who do you reach out to there? How do you determine who it is that you send those ideas to?
In most cases, it's usually, I've been interacting with the platform enough that I know somebody. So at Quora, I was just like obsessively answering Quora questions, and that gave me the experience to say, here's 10 ideas for Quora. But by that point, I knew the people involved a little bit because they kept liking my posts, and I would send little tweets or whatever. And with Google, I had a friend of a friend of a friend. With Amazon, because I self-published there, I was able to send it up the chain to the head of self-publishing, and they knew who I was because at the time I probably had the most successful self-published nonfiction book that they had seen at that point. This was like 2014. So usually there's some in, but when I sent this first batch of emails in 2002, I had no in at all. I had to guess on email addresses. Some people I would send 5, 6 emails, it would bounce back. I'd try a new combination, send it, and it would work. So sometimes you have no, but if you're just giving and you're not expecting anything back, like out of that initial 20 emails I sent out, only 3 responded. So most people still will not respond. But if your philosophy is, I need to exercise this idea muscle, that's the main goal of this. Secondary is to network, then you're okay if most people don't respond. And it still works really well.
That makes sense. Thank you. Mike says, what do you think is going to happen to the travel industry? How long do you think it'll take that industry to recover?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, what's funny is, I guess I can't even remember. Time is going by in a weird way, but I guess it's 3 weeks ago today. I was in the Netherlands performing. I had spent the whole prior week performing in 5 different cities in 5 days, stand-up comedy in the Netherlands. I went to Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Zwolle, a bunch of other cities I can't pronounce. And probably I was the last, for all we know, I was the last touring comedian abroad ever. And then the day after we got back, they kind of locked everything down. But I think the travel industry will sort of half come back. And then it's going to take a really long time. Like after 9/11, people stopped flying. I didn't fly for a good 5 years after 9/11. And I think it's going to be similar, but maybe even worse. Anything that was for 9/11 or for the financial crisis is going to be worse now, because this is just this is the worst. People have argued with me about this. I would say this is the worst crisis in the past since the Spanish flu. So it's worse than World War II, at least for the US. And I mean, this has affected the entire globe. But also at the same time, it's the first time all 7 billion people on the globe united for a single goal, which was to solve this crisis. No matter where you thought we were on the crisis, it still became a crisis. And we all still are determined to solve it as a species, the first time in the human species. So this is like, we all lived through this. We're the greatest generation now. Like, we did this. And, now, but it's going to be a very new normal. And I think travel is not going to be a big part of that new normal.
I think you're right. Cole Joseph says, what is the best way to find investment opportunities in either real estate or businesses for sale? And he wants the good opportunities, not market price listings.
Sure. So, real estate's a tricky one because, again, I mean, I'm in New York City, which is probably just the worst in terms of real estate now. I mean, this is New York City. They're calling it the capital of the world for coronavirus. So it's not like that's a open invitation for people to buy apartments here. Like in my building right now, 90% of the people left before they shut down New York City, anticipating that New York, I considered it, but I like New York City. I didn't want to leave. And I didn't think it's better anywhere else than here anyway. But, maybe New York City's but, in terms of other places, you want to buy real estate unless you're thinking about it as a home, or just think about real estate as an investment. If someone told you, hey, Roland, I want you to take all the cash that's in your bank and just give it to me. Just send it over here. And then, by the way, I need you to go to the bank, Roland, and borrow another 400% on top of that. Send that over to me as well. And then I'm going to give you a home, which is very hard to sell. If times are bad, Roland, give it a year. Maybe you'll be able to sell it and get some of your money back, maybe. And meanwhile, you're going to have to pay interest and property taxes and maintenance. Doesn't really sound like a good investment. But if you're thinking about real estate as an investment, you want to go to the probate court, find out which wills are being, dealt with, because the children might want to sell their dad or mom's house at a discount. Find out what divorces are being, contested, because maybe they need to sell their house at a discount. Find out who owes state taxes, because maybe they'd be willing to sell their house at a discount. Unfortunately, you need to have advantage. You need to take advantage of disadvantage in real estate. In terms of businesses, like anything, you want to buy things that give you a large degree of return. Like, let's say you want to buy a laundromat, and the sale price is $100,000, but they make $50,000 a year profit. So you're buying for 2 times profit. It's almost as if you put your money in a savings account that's giving you 50% instead of 0%. So that's how you judge, roughly, in simple cases, that's how you judge your risk versus your opportunity. And then you decide if the risk is something you're willing to take. And if you have opportunities, a special edge to reduce that risk. So always reducing risk is the first goal of an entrepreneur. I think Roland would agree. Reducing risk is the first goal. And then you find the opportunities where you can reduce the risk, but everyone else perceives it as too risky, and that's when you buy. So how to find those, right now in the stock market, you can find them, which, by the way, they haven't been here for years in the stock market until now, or
housing for that matter. In a lot of places, the prices were just crazy, at least coastally.
Yeah. So I think maybe there might be opportunities. There also might be opportunities internationally, developing countries like maybe not Argentina, but like Panama has a good government, a good healthcare system. The GDP's been, until now, the GDP's been growing at like almost a double-digit rate. And as an American in a foreign country, you can usually get the American discount, because if you find a developer who's working on a project and you say, hey, I'll buy an apartment, but I want a 20% discount, they'll say yes, because the other Panamanians like to see that Americans are buying the project. Now, buy a project that's not finished yet, because then you'll get the discount from it not being finished. So there's all sorts of tricks in real estate. But it's the same thing for businesses. It's almost the same principles in businesses. I'm curious what anybody else thinks about this. I haven't really dived into it. There's a site, flippa.com, FLIPPA.com. Yep. And every day they list these websites for sale that seem to be very profitable, and the risk seems to fit the reward in a very good way. And you could potentially buy a lot of them, get back office synergies or other types of synergies, and then the multiple that you sell it with could go up. So that's an idea. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but when I see things like on this, and then you have to ask, if it's such a great idea, why do I keep getting these emails every day? Why isn't there more demand for these businesses? So I don't know the answer, but that's the type of thing I look for.
I love it. 2 more questions, and then we'll sign off. The first is from Jen Gottlieb and Chris Winfield, who say, are you getting more engagement when you post seemingly positive or seemingly negative content, podcast, Facebook posts, etc.?
I'll be honest. I think if my strategy was just engagement, then the best thing to do is negative, but which I have not done at all. So regarding coronavirus, if I had posted negative content, like really proven that it's 2 million deaths, blah, 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 no one will ever question you later if you're wrong. You could just say, well, fortunately, we did social distancing and testing and everything. So fortunately, I said what I did because I was right, and then we were safe. You do get more negative engagement. I mean, you do get more engagement when you have negative news about anything, and particularly with this coronavirus. So I've been posting positive stuff. I've been getting a fair amount of engagement. Coronavirus is the only topic in the world right now. So no matter what you post on coronavirus, if it's somewhat unique, you're going to get more engagement than usual. I've been posting what I consider realistic stuff, and other people would say is positive. And I've been getting very good engagement. I would say it's like 90-10, with the 10% being people calling me a dipshit repeatedly over and over again, or that I think the stock market is more important than lives, or some other, just idiotic statement, which is not true. But, I tend to try to post what is my unique stance on something. And if you express it well, you should get engagement. But in general, for every topic, negative does better than positive. I wish I was a more negative person.
Yeah, well, they said they like your positive stuff a lot better, so at least you got a couple people. Last question from Zach, which I think is a great way to go out here. What is your favorite online learning tool or course? I'm going to add books in there that you're loving right now. He said you mentioned Masterclass. Do you have a favorite course on there, favorite book of all time, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because, I've done all these podcasts with so many of my heroes and hero writers. They all become my favorites on the book side. But, just in terms of books, I think for a time like now, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a great book. I don't want to say it's my favorite enjoyable bedtime reading book, but here's a guy who survived Auschwitz by searching for meaning in his life, and it's a relatively quick story. So that's a good book to read right now. But I read stuff constantly. I have tons of favorite books. In terms of my favorite platform, I like the Masterclass stuff. I liked Steve Martin's course on comedy. On Coursera, I first heard of Yuval Harari by taking his course, and then a year or so later, he came out with the book on that course called Sapiens, and then he came on my podcast, and I got to know him pretty well, and I've made friends through a lot of these courses. I was also an investor in Teachable, which just got sold last week. So even in the midst of this entire crisis, this online learning company, because this is the future, got sold. I wish I had invested.
One of our War Room members bought that. Hotmart.
I think they did a good thing. Those guys are really good. And online learning, this is inning number. We realize now this is only inning number 1 for that. It's going to keep going up. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities there.
That's great. Have you read A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich as well, along with Viktor Frankl? Yeah, it's very, very good. I read that a long time ago, like 20 years ago, but it's very good. I mean, in terms of novels, there's no inspiration. I don't really like inspirational novels, but I've been reading Bright Shiny Morning by James Frey, and I've been reading. I just read lots of books at any given time. I just read The Catalyst by Jonah Berger, which is a really good book about how to persuade people, and it's a good book from a marketing perspective. So it's interesting. Nice. And so, James, where's the best way for people to get a hold of you? What should they read? How should they reach you?
The absolute best way to find me now is TikTok. James Altucher on TikTok. It's my new playground, but also Instagram. And listen to the James Altucher Show. I have a lot of fun doing my podcast. That's been my main endeavor lately is my podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.
Roland, it's so good to see you, and thanks so much. I appreciate it. Be safe and be good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.